This story was sent to me by a woman. She did not reveal her name, but in her conversation, there was a burden that only those people carry who have spent years living with an unseen trial. Some stories, when you hear them, do not just make you afraid, they make you silent. This was one of those stories. She said, "My father was a tailor in a famous market in Karachi. He was not just a man who stitched clothes, but so skilled in his craft that people would leave their fabric with him with the same trust as if they were placing a precious trust in the hands of a reliable man. There was a strange precision in his hands. When he cut, the fabric sat perfectly straight. When he took measurements, not even an inch of difference would occur. And when he stitched a suit, the person wearing it would feel special." During the wedding season, the sound of machines would continue late into the night at his shop. On Eid days, there would be a line of people waiting to take tokens outside the shop. I still remember that a few days before Eid, when he returned home late at night, there would be tiredness in his eyes, his shoulders would be slumped, but on his face there was also a peace. A manly satisfaction that his hard work was paying off, that halal sustenance was coming in, and the household was running. In our house there was no royal luxury nor any display of wealth, but there was no shortage either. Ration came on time, school fees were paid, new clothes were made for Eid, mother had money for household expenses, and we thought that perhaps life would always remain like this. Simple, ordinary, but safe. Father had a habit. He would often say the same sentence: "A man should not live under a rented roof. A man should build his own shadow." He did not say this just to dream. He had been silently working on it for years, saving a little here, investing a little in business, keeping a little in the house. First, he built a small workshop with just 2 machines. Then slowly, he hired 2 workers in the shop. Then he did not limit himself to simple stitching, but started taking on work for ready-made clothes fitting, boutique finishing, special handwork, and final setting of expensive suits. His scope began to expand. People who used to come only to get clothes stitched now started entrusting their daughters, sisters, and wives special suits to him. His name began to be known in the market. But this is the principle of the world. When a man's hard work begins to pay off, not only well-wishers increase, some silent enemies also begin to gather. Those people who smile and talk to your face, but inside burn with jealousy at your progress. Those people who start seeing your success not as your hard work, but as an insult to themselves. This was the time when Father decided to take a new shop in a better part of the market. He used to say that if this step worked, our lives would change. He would sit many nights calculating accounts. Sometimes he would open the register, sometimes write estimates on slips, sometimes discuss with mother how much loan could be taken, how much risk could be taken. He found a place for the shop, fixed the advance, invested some saved capital, borrowed some, and began preparations to turn the dream of a new beginning into reality. In those days he was very busy, but the strange thing was that along with happiness, an unusual restlessness also began to come over him. He did not laugh as much as before. He would often become silent. Sometimes he would zone out while sitting. Sometimes it felt as if his mind was under some unknown pressure. We first thought it was business tension. Mother also said that it was a big step, so his mood was heavy. But later we understood that pressure was not just business. There was something else, something that had begun to walk alongside him. Just a few weeks after taking the new shop, circumstances began to change, as if someone had started closing all the paths one by one. The customers who had been with him for years suddenly started decreasing. Some people would give cloth and then disappear. Some orders were canceled after Father had already bought the fabric, and the loss had to be borne from his own pocket. 2 or 3 times it happened that on a completely finished suit, at the last moment, some stain or defect appeared that was beyond understanding, even though Father's hands never produced such things. Once, water seeped from the upper line in the shop and ruined several expensive fabrics. Another time, on a big order, even after taking advance payment, the customer accused Father of swapping the fabric. The more Father tried to explain, the more the situation backfired. Sometimes a worker would make a mistake that he had not made in years. Sometimes an electricity problem, sometimes a machine suddenly breaking down, sometimes a customer quarrel, sometimes a delay in goods. Father used to say that if loss comes from one direction, a person can manage it. But when small holes appear on every side, the boat starts to sink. This was exactly what was happening to us. It was not one accident, not one bad day, not 2 days of bad luck. It was a sequence, a series in which every path was being closed, and after every effort, a new difficulty would arise. In the house, too, blessings seemed to be withdrawing. The money that used to seem sufficient even when it was less, now started falling short even when it was more. Ration would finish quickly. Suddenly, expenses would appear from somewhere. Sometimes a child's books, sometimes medicine, sometimes a loss in the shop, sometimes debt. When Father came home, he no longer had that peace on his face that used to be there. He was not the same man as before. On his shoulders there was not just a financial burden. An unknown mental darkness had also begun to cling to him. His silence increased. He used to give his opinion on everything, sit with the children, share shop stories with Mother. But now many times he would come after evening prayer and sit directly in a corner. Tea would be in his hand, but it would go cold. Mother would ask 2 or 3 times, "What happened?" He would just say one word, "Nothing." But in that nothing was such a burden that not just a person, but even the walls seemed to feel it. The atmosphere inside the house began to change. Mother also started to melt in worry. Earlier, she would comfort Father, support him, give him courage. But when one difficulty after another began to come, bitterness also started to appear in her tone. Irritation would arise over small matters. Sometimes an argument over too much salt, sometimes anger at the noise of the children, sometimes a quarrel over expenses. Fights had never happened in our house with such intensity before. But now they started happening too. The strange thing was that often we would not even remember later what the fight had started over, as if the real reason was something else and only an excuse came to the tongue. Many times it felt as if every person in the house had become a little more irritable, a little more sensitive, a little more tired than before, as if not only money had decreased, but courage had also decreased. We children were not old enough at that time to understand the real reason for the ups and downs of business, but we were also not so young that we could not feel the changing atmosphere of the house. We could tell by the sound of Father's footsteps how the day had gone. If he came with quick steps, perhaps some work had been done. If he came slowly, remained silent even while taking off his shoes, then we knew things were bad. I still remember those evenings when after the evening prayer a strange darkness would spread in the house. The outside lights would be on. The bulbs inside would also be lit. But still, it felt as if a shadow had descended upon the house. Father would sit on a chair. Tea would be placed in front of him. He would take it in his hand but would not drink it. Mother would ask once or twice, "What happened?" He would say, "Nothing." But in that nothing was so much tiredness, so much helplessness, and so much suppressed fear that even we children would fall silent. It felt as if not only his heart was sinking, but the whole house was sitting with him, holding its breath, listening to something. One day my maternal uncle came to the house. He had not come laughing and joking as on ordinary days. There was seriousness on his face, as if he had already sensed something. He looked at Father carefully as soon as he arrived. He sat silently for a few moments, then slowly started the conversation. First, he asked about the business, then about the details of the losses. Then one by one, all those things that Father was facing. As Father spoke, the seriousness on my uncle's face increased. Finally, he gave a suggestion that was easy to hear but very difficult to accept. He said that if the shop was not recovering at this time, then temporarily take a job somewhere so that the situation could improve and the mind could get some peace. This matter might be ordinary for an ordinary man, but for a person who had been his own master for years, who gave work to others, going to work under someone else was not just a decision. It was like breaking a part of his own pride, self-respect, and identity. But circumstances had become such that there was no room for refusal, so father accepted this decision. My uncle said that he knew someone in a company where perhaps suitable work could be found. It was decided that the next morning, father would go there. I still remember the scene of that next morning because the atmosphere that day was different from ordinary days. Father prepared with more care than usual. He wore a white shalwar camise, combed his hair, took a file containing some papers, and walked toward the door. Mother stood silently behind him and watched him as if some unknown anxiety had gripped her heart. Later, she used to say that she had a strange restlessness that day, as if she was not sending her husband for routine work, but toward some test whose outcome was uncertain. Father looked at us with a faint smile as he left, but that smile did not reach his eyes. Then he opened the door and went outside. The door closed, and a silence spread in the house that was not ordinary silence. It was filled with waiting, restlessness, and unknown fear. Afternoon passed. Mother consoled herself that perhaps the conversation was taking time. Then evening came and the tea that was prepared went cold, but there was no news of father. As time passed, Mother's restlessness increased. She kept looking toward the door, sometimes peeking outside, sometimes looking at the clock as if trying to stop time or move it forward. Then suddenly my uncle's phone came, and one sentence of his completely changed the atmosphere of the house. "Brother never came here." After this sentence, everything seemed to freeze in place. Mother's color drained. We children also started looking at each other. For the first time, we realized that something was truly wrong. At that time, not everyone had a mobile phone in their hand, nor the convenience of instant communication. So if someone left home and did not return, it could truly be terrifying. Every moment began to feel heavy. Every passing hour felt like many hours, and a silence fell over the house in which every heart was filled with its own fears. After much of the night had passed, there was a knock on the door. Mother almost ran to the door. As soon as the door opened, father was standing in front, but he did not look like the same person who had left home in the morning. His face had turned pale as if he had been ill for many days. His clothes were covered in dust and dirt. His eyes were red not from lack of sleep but from some inner brokenness. His lips were dry. He came inside, but he did not sit on a chair. It was as if he did not even have the strength to stand. He sat down directly on the floor. Mother immediately went to him. She gave him water. She asked questions. But for a few moments he could not speak at all, as if the words had become locked somewhere inside him. Then suddenly, tears started flowing from his eyes. That scene was the most terrifying for us because seeing a father cry is heavier for a child than any fear in the world. After a long time, when his breath was somewhat restored, he told us what had happened, and what he said silenced every person in the house. He said that he was sitting on the bus. Everything was normal. The route was the same. The people were ordinary, but suddenly he began to feel intense panic. First, his heart started beating fast. Then his breath began to stop. And then he felt as if someone came very close to his ear and softly, but clearly, kept repeating the same thing again and again. "Do not go, go back." He looked around many times, but he could not see any such person who was speaking to him. Everything inside the bus was normal, but that voice would not stop. It became even clearer. He tried to convince himself that it was just an illusion, but as he moved forward, that voice began to feel closer. And along with it, a strange fear began to spread inside him. He felt as if he went any further on this path, something would happen from which there would be no return. This feeling was so intense that he barely waited for the next stop. As soon as the bus stopped, he got off, almost stumbling. After that, he could neither go forward nor return back. Instead, he sat on the side of the road for many hours. He said that he kept trying to get up, but his body would not cooperate, as if someone had held him there. And in his mind, only one thought kept coming again and again. If he had gone forward, perhaps he would not have been able to return. He remained in this state for many hours, until night fell, and then somehow he returned home. But the person who had left home in the morning had not returned. In his place, a person had come back inside whom something had broken, and perhaps something else had also returned with him. After hearing what father had experienced on the bus, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. For the first time, the conversation was no longer limited to bad luck or difficult times. Slowly, it began to turn toward the possibility of some kind of effect or affliction. Until now, we had been trying to connect everything to some worldly reason. But now, the pattern of events had become such that calling them mere coincidences felt like deceiving ourselves. Mother immediately told her mother, our grandmother, everything. And the very next day, my maternal uncle Farouk came again. This time, the manner of his arrival was different. He had not come just to ask about the situation, but to understand the matter and reach some conclusion. Consultations were held with some other close people. Various opinions came forward. Some called it the evil eye. Some said it was jealousy. Some said perhaps it was business rivalry. While all this discussion was still going on, an incident occurred that gave direction to all these speculations. Father found a small, tied amulet in a corner of the roof where no one usually went. It was not like the ordinary amulets that people keep for protection. There was no clean thread on it, no clear prayer written on it. It was wrapped in a fold of dirty cloth, tied with thread in such a way that it looked as if it had been made in a hurry and placed in a spot where it could be seen but not immediately picked up, as if someone had both hidden it and left it. In its presence, there was a strange repulsiveness, an atmosphere that would make the person who saw it restless for no reason. When that amulet was taken in hand, Mother herself said that she felt a strange unease from it, as if it was not just an object but carried the weight of some intention. Now the matter had indeed become serious. That amulet was taken to a religious scholar. He opened it and looked at it. He examined it in silence for a while. Then he wrapped it back. He did not give many details, perhaps because he did not want to throw the family into more fear, but the expressions on his face were enough. He only said this much. This was not placed for protection. It was placed with the intention of restriction, and this does not seem to be the work of a stranger. These words were simple, but their effect shook every member of the house. The pain that came on Mother's face at that moment was not just of fear, it was of being broken by one's own people. Because if this was done by someone close, it meant the danger was not from outside, but from inside. After this, the process of treatment began. The recitation of the Quran was increased in the house. Selected verses were recited and blown over water. That water was sprinkled in the house. Father was given it to drink. Various prayers and precautions were observed. But this was not a matter that would end in one day or one night. The scholar gave a suggestion that sounded simple but was very difficult to act upon. He said that for one night, Father would have to sleep alone in a room, and all other family members would stay separately, so that it could be determined to what extent and what kind of effect was present. When Father later described that night, our hair stood on end, because it was no ordinary night. It was a trial in which a person fights his courage, his faith, and his fear all at once. Father said that in the beginning everything was normal. He lay on the bed reciting verses. After some time, complete silence fell in the room, but after midnight, suddenly, he felt that the temperature of the room was changing, as if the air had become not cold but lifeless. Then he felt that someone was standing against the wall, completely silent but present. He did not dare to open his eyes, but the feeling was so clear as if someone's gaze was fixed on him. After a few moments, he felt as if someone had run from one corner of the room to the other. Then a faint laugh was heard. Then another. Then as if many voices were laughing together in a suppressed tone. He said that laughter was not human. There was no joy in it. Rather, there was a strange hollowness, as if an echo in an empty space. Then suddenly, he felt as if someone was breathing under the cot. Heavy, deep breaths, as if someone was present right beneath him. Then it felt as if someone came to his pillow and stopped there. After that, a moment came when he felt that someone had put weight on his chest, as if someone had sat on him or leaned over him. Breathing became difficult, and along with that, a cold pressure was felt near his throat, as if someone was trying to grab his neck. He said that at that moment, if he had not been reciting verses, perhaps he would not have even been able to scream. But he kept his eyes closed, repeated the verses in his heart, and did not try to move. According to him, that night was not a night of one incident but of continuous states, as if someone was testing him, frightening him, and watching to see when he would break. He said that night was not about sleep. It was a battle, and that battle continued until the morning call to prayer. There came a stage in the house when everyone together decided that a collective recitation of the Quran should be held. The elders said that the blessing of the Quran changes the atmosphere of the house, and such things become weaker. Our grandmother, who was a very pious woman with strong faith and no fear, stepped forward herself. She said that retreating in fear was not the solution. The thing that runs away from the Quran itself becomes weak. Her words had a certainty that gave us some courage as well. But that same day, an incident occurred that shook us from within. Grandmother had performed ablution and returned. She had just bent down to pick up the Holy Quran when suddenly, with a loud scream, she fell to the ground. That scream was such that every heart in the house trembled. Later, she told us that she felt as if someone had suddenly, and with full force, twisted her ankle, as if some unseen power was turning and breaking her foot. At that very moment, the outer door of the house opened forcefully, even though the wind was not strong enough to do that. Along with it, a strange wave ran through the house, as if someone had announced their presence. We all ran to her in panic. She was crying out in pain, and within a short time, it became clear that the matter was not ordinary. Later, the doctor said that there was a crack in the bone. This incident broke the spirits of the family. Those who had been showing courage until now were also shaken from within. The process of Quran recitation stopped due to fear, and for the first time, we felt intensely that whatever was with us was not limited to being seen or felt. It could also take action. Perhaps it was giving us a message that it was watching our every move. My youngest sister, Hina, was affected the most by all this. And perhaps this was the most heartbreaking thing for us, because she was the youngest in age, but in temperament she was the most serious, silent, and inclined toward faith. That child who, even at an age of playing and running, would wake up on her own after the morning prayer, recite the Quran, and often sit with mother memorizing prayers. Slowly, that same child was becoming the center of the strangest and most terrifying incidents in the house. Initially, we thought her words were just the fears of a child. She would wake me up with a gentle shake after the morning prayer and say softly, "You were sleeping. Someone came and lay down near my feet." Still half asleep, I would comfort her, saying it was just a dream and go back to sleep. But after a few days, the same words in her tone began to come not with fear but with certainty. She started saying, "She comes every day." First she would just sit. Then slowly she started coming closer. And then one day, she said that something like a woman was running her hand through her hair, like a mother lovingly stroking her child before putting her to sleep. Hearing this, a strange restlessness arose in us, because this was not just scary. There was an unnatural familiarity in it, and this was what made it even more dangerous. She would say that sometimes she leaned over her forehead, sometimes lay down next to her, and sometimes tried to pull her closer. Once, she even said in a very low voice, "Today she was angry." We were all startled. Mother immediately asked, "Who?" But Hina fell silent, as if she herself did not understand what she was saying, or perhaps she wanted to say something but could not. After this, her condition began to change rapidly. The color of her skin started to become pale. Shadows appeared under her eyes. She became weak. And the most terrifying thing was that sleep seemed to have been stolen from her. She would stay awake at night. During the day, she would sit lifeless. Sometimes she would suddenly start crying. Sometimes she would smile while looking at an empty wall. Once Mother told us that Hina was sitting alone, talking softly to someone, but there was no one there. This was the stage where Father decided that we would have to leave this house. But before this decision, an incident occurred that changed the direction of this entire story. One day, Grandmother insisted that this matter should be taken to a more experienced religious scholar. This time, the person contacted was someone who spoke less with ordinary people and observed more. He came to the house, looked at the atmosphere, sat silently for a while. Then he asked a few questions, especially about their business, new decisions, and the people who were close to them. Then he asked a strange question. Did any close relative of yours have a problem with your progress, especially any woman who used to visit your house? Hearing this question, everyone started looking at each other because no clear such thing had come to anyone's mind. But then slowly, a change appeared on Mother's face. She wanted to say something but stopped. The scholar looked at her and said, "What is coming to your heart is usually the truth. Do not ignore it." After much hesitation, Mother took a name, our paternal aunt. She used to visit our house often, especially in those days when Father's business was growing. In the beginning, she would express great happiness. She would pray for us. But sometimes in her sentences there would be a slight bitterness, as if some other thing was hidden behind the veil of praise. Once or twice, Mother had also noticed that she would look at every corner of the house in a strange way, especially that place where later we found the amulet. The scholar recited some more things. Then, in a very low voice, he said, "The effect has come from inside the house, not from outside. And this intention was not just to stop, but to bind. So that progress would stop, peace would leave, and the house would begin to break under its own weight." Hearing this, everything seemed to fall into place. Father began to remember all those moments when our aunt had raised strange questions about his business decisions, when she had fallen silent after hearing about the new shop, and when she had once softly said, "Not everything is meant for everyone." That sentence had seemed ordinary at the time, but now it began to feel like a hint. Knowing this reality was not easy, because if enmity comes from outside, a person can fight it. But when it comes from one's own blood, a person breaks. For Father, it was even more difficult because he did not even want to think such things about his own sister. But the circumstances and the signs were both pointing in the same direction. After this, the decision to leave the house was all but final. But as soon as we made this decision, the difficulties increased. Efforts to sell the house had been made several times before, but now with every effort some obstacle would inevitably appear. Some buyer would come, like the place, agree on a price, but at the last moment he would back out. Once, a man even gave an advance. But the very next day he returned and said, "I don't know why, but my heart is not agreeing," and took his money back. Another time, such a problem arose in the paperwork that had never come up before, as if some unseen force did not want us to leave this house. Finally, after months of effort, prayers, and continuous obstacles, the house was sold. On the last day, when we were packing our belongings, the atmosphere of the house was strange. It was not as heavy as before, but not completely light either, as if someone was silently watching us, as if it knew that we were leaving. Mother stood at the door and looked at the entire house for the last time. There was moisture in her eyes, but also peace on her face. She recited a short chapter of the Quran, touched the door, and walked out without looking back. After that day, we never turned to look at that house again. Thank God. After moving to the new place, a clear difference was seen in the situation. That continuous presence, that laughter at night, that weight on the bed, those shadows, all of it slowly began to disappear. My youngest sister Hina's condition began to improve. Her sleep returned. The color returned to her face. Father's work also slowly began to recover, and that peace began to return to the house which we had forgotten. But despite all this, one thing remained with us forever: the realization that destruction does not always come with noise. Sometimes, in silence, through the hands of your own people, disguised as prayers, it crosses the threshold of your home. And by the time you realize that this is not just bad times, it has already made its place inside you. I am now going to tell you the rest of the story as I learned it over the years, from my mother, from my grandmother, and from the fragments of conversations I overheard as I grew older. After we left that house, Father never spoke to his sister again, not out of anger but out of a brokenness that words cannot heal. He would say, "I do not hate her. I just cannot understand how someone who sat at the same table, ate the same food, and called my children her own could do such a thing." My mother, however, took a different path. She forgave her, she said. Holding on to that poison would only hurt us more. She will face her own account. We must focus on healing. And healing did come, slowly, like dawn after a long night. Father found a job first, as my uncle had suggested. It was not his own shop, not the business he had built with his own hands, but it was honest work. He would leave every morning and return every evening. There was dignity in that routine. There was safety. Within 2 years, he had saved enough to start a small workshop again. This time, he was cautious. He did not expand quickly. He did not take big loans. He did not trust easily. The fire of ambition was still there, but now it was tempered with wisdom. My sister Hina, who had been the most affected, grew into a young woman of strong faith. She would later tell me that those experiences, as terrifying as they were, brought her closer to God. "When you feel something invisible touching your hair in the dark," she said, "you learn very quickly who your real protector is." She never forgot the shadow woman, but she stopped being afraid of her. She would say, "She had no power over me once I started reciting the Quran regularly. She would come, but she would stand at a distance. She could not come near." Years later, when Hina got married, she asked Mother for one thing: a small copy of the Quran to keep under her pillow. Mother smiled and gave it to her. Some habits, born from fear, become shields of faith. As for the house we left, I heard stories over the years. Some neighbors said that after we moved out, the house remained empty for a long time. No one wanted to buy it. The few families who rented it never stayed more than a few months. They would complain of strange sounds, of cold spots in warm weather, of a feeling of being watched. Once, a rumor spread that a construction worker saw a woman in old-fashioned clothes standing at the upstairs window in the middle of the night. When he looked again, she was gone. The house was empty. It had been locked for weeks. Another time, a group of young men decided to spend a night there on a dare. They left before midnight. They would not say what they saw, but their faces were pale for days afterward. Eventually, the house was demolished. A new building stands there now. I do not know if the shadow woman found another place to go, or if she finally left. I do not know if she was a jinn, a ghost, or something else entirely. The scholar had told us that some effects attach themselves to places, not just to people. Maybe when we left, the attachment broke, or maybe it just transferred. I never asked Father about the amulet again. But once, many years later, when I was an adult, we were sitting together on a quiet evening. The conversation drifted to the past. He spoke about that time with a calm that surprised me. He said, "Do you know what the scholar told me privately?" He said the amulet was made with such precision that it was not meant to kill or destroy. It was meant to suffocate, slowly, day by day, like a plant wrapped in a cloth that gets tighter every time it tries to grow. Whoever made it knew exactly what they were doing. I asked, "Do you still think about her?" He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Every day, not with anger, with sadness. She was my sister. She watched me struggle for years. When I finally succeeded, she could not bear it. That is a kind of sickness, and I pray that Allah cures her of it." He never confronted her. He never confronted anyone. He chose silence. Not weakness, but a strength that comes from knowing that some battles are not won by shouting. My mother, however, did one thing that I will never forget. She went to our aunt's house one day, years after we had moved. She took a box of sweets and a new shawl. She did not mention the past. She did not ask questions. She simply sat, drank tea, and spoke of ordinary things. When she returned home, I asked her why she had gone. She said, because hatred would have been another lock on our door. I chose to open it instead. That was the day I understood what true forgiveness meant. It did not mean forgetting. It did not mean pretending nothing had happened. It meant refusing to carry the poison they had tried to feed you. Our aunt never admitted to anything. She never apologized, but she also never visited us again after we moved. Perhaps she knew that we knew. Perhaps shame kept her away. Perhaps fear. I will never know. What I do know is that the black magic was real. The amulet was real. The shadows were real. The voice on the bus, the laughing in the dark, the hands on my sister's hair, the broken ankle of my grandmother, all of it was real. But the healing was also real. Father's business after the initial struggle flourished again. This time he did it with a quiet humility. He never spoke of his success. He never boasted. He would say, "Every penny that comes to me now is a gift. I take nothing for granted." My sister Hina became a teacher. She teaches young children how to read the Quran. She tells them stories of faith and protection. She never tells them her own story. She says, when they are older, they will face their own darkness. They will need their own shields. My mother, the strongest person I have ever known, passed away a few years ago. On her last night, she held my hand and said, "Do not be afraid of the unseen. Be afraid of the evil that lives in human hearts. That is the real black magic." She closed her eyes and left this world with a smile. I believe she saw something beautiful at the end. Perhaps the light that had always guided her. I still dream sometimes, not nightmares anymore, just shadows at the edge of sleep. Sometimes I hear a faint laugh, but I recite the verses of protection and it fades. The woman who sent me this story ended her message with these words. "Today I am telling you this not to scare you but to warn you. Be careful who you let into your home. Be careful who you share your joys with. Not everyone who says mashallah means it with a pure heart. Some carry envy wrapped in prayer beads. Some smile with their lips and curse with their souls. And by the time you realize it, the damage has already been done." She added, "But do not live in fear. Live with awareness. Trust in God more than you trust in people. Recite the Quran daily. Make it your companion. No black magic, no shadow, no jinn, no evil eye can touch a house where the Quran is recited with faith. That is the strongest protection there is." I asked her permission to share her story. She agreed on one condition, that I do not reveal her identity. I have kept that promise. I also promised to add this. If you are going through something similar, unexplained losses, constant arguments, nightmares, a heaviness in your home, do not ignore it. Seek help. Not from random practitioners who claim to know the unseen, but from sincere people of faith who rely on the Quran and authentic prayers. And most importantly, do not lose hope. The night is darkest before dawn, but dawn always comes. I end this story with a prayer. May Allah protect every home from hidden evils. May He shield every family from the envy of those who cannot bear to see others happy. May He give us the strength to forgive, the wisdom to recognize danger, and the faith to never walk alone in the dark. And if you are the one who has been harmed, may you find healing, may you find peace, and may you never let the shadows steal your light. If you like this story, please like the video and leave a kind comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories of faith, fear, and the unseen. We will meet again, God willing, with another story. Until then, protect your heart, protect your home, and never forget, the strongest amulet is the Word of God.